I am now recording.
Great.
And hello, H. Smith. What's your first name? Can't remember.
I think that's Helen from New York.
Hi, Helen from New York. Hi, Elise. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Paul. Elise, are you ready for Friday?
What's on Friday?
The CBB.
Oh, yes. Guys, I have my magic wand here.
And I have my coffee.
So, Mark, I assume we're just waiting a few minutes to see how many other folks join?
Yeah. 'Cause right now, who's that? Well, I think we may have had Helen briefly with the sky behind her.
No, that's Paul.
Oh, that's Paul?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Polani? Should we give it another minute?
I think, yeah, maybe just 1 minute and then we can get going.
Okay.
Well, you can see us. That's not good.
No, we like being able to see you. Can you see us?
Well, we certainly can.
Okay, good.
Excellent. All of you who can hear my voice, there is a control in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen that switches from gallery view to speaker view. You can play with it now. If you click gallery view, it gives you sort of a Brady Bunch overview of everybody. And then if you click speaker view, it just puts up whoever's mic is the loudest, which for reasons I cannot explain seems to be Paul.
Well, I'll lower my volume.
It's fine.
Once you get started, I'm going to mute everyone but the pitcher. So,
what if the picture doesn't show up?
What if what?
Our picture doesn't show up.
There should be a way that you can unmute your,
Mask.
Unmask, make your video live. Let me see if I can help you troubleshoot that. Let me exit the full screen. Let's see.
Jerry, do you know how to make a picture come up on this?
Oh, okay, guys. So if you're not in full screen view, and you put your cursor over the bottom of this interface, there should be something that says, in mine it says stop video, which I think if I do, I'll stop my video. Yours might say start video. Do you want to try hitting that?
There's nothing on mine that says start video.
There isn't?
Kathy.
Do you have a camera on your
I take that back. There's a little camera thing on it.
Great.
Okay. Oops.
Hit that and you should come up.
You know what? I don't have a
Well, it didn't.
computer.
It said a download will start.
Okay.
But that's what it did at the very beginning. So now I don't have anybody. So, go ahead. Yeah, so what do I download again or?
I wouldn't worry about downloading anything right now.
Well, now I don't have anybody's pictures. I don't have you guys.
Okay.
It went away.
Did the whole interface go away, Kathy?
Yeah, all the boxes with the faces. So now it says, if not, download here. Let me try this. Oh, didn't do that. Okay, never mind.
Go ahead and quit and log back in. And once you're back in, we'll get started.
Okay, so what
in
do
the
I
lower
do
right-hand
then?
corner, there's a button that says leave meeting. Go ahead.
Nope, there isn't.
There isn't.
Nope, there's nothing.
Okay,
Nope.
I can kick you
Show
out.
all. No, it's not doing that. Okay.
I'm going to kick you out, and then you can just click the link.
Okay.
All right, see you in a second.
Click what?
Just click on the link again, and it'll bring you right back.
Oh, okay.
Okay. See you
Do
in
I
a
have to
second.
call in again?
All right. Did you use the phone?
I've got both the phone and the computer.
You
Yeah.
don't have to call in again.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so Kathy, I know you can still hear us, and so you can just click that link. And now I just want to quickly see if we want to troubleshoot anything with Helen. Helen, did you say that you don't have a camera on your computer?
Yeah, I just realized that I didn't even think about it. I'm on my desktop. Now I could go boot up a laptop and.
No, don't worry about it. As long as you can hear us, I think we're fine. Don't you, Mark?
Totally.
Okay, great. And I can no longer, the only people I can see are Polani, Aaliyah, and Mark. I can't see anybody else.
We're the only ones with video on.
Oh, okay.
I didn't think you wanted to watch me eat lunch.
Depends what you're eating. Welcome back, Kathy. Did that work? Kathy, can you hear us? And we were just joined by someone with a 304 area code. Who might that be?
This is Trisha, Kangaroo, West Virginia Kids Count. Hello.
Hey, Tricia.
Hi there.
We'll just give it one more minute. It's a small group, so we're definitely going to be able to cover everything we wanted to cover today, and probably have time left over. And the 202-408-1080, who is that? All right, don't tell us.
Just to ask again, there's someone who has dialed in from a number 202-408-1080. Could you let us know?
I know that number. That's somebody from the Center on Budget.
Hi, this is Elise Marsh. That's actually not my phone number, but it's the Center on Budget's phone number. Sorry for the pause.
No worries.
You're
Okay.
on twice. You must have called in and then logged in at the same time.
Great.
Okay.
Perfect.
Polani, do you want to kick
Yes.
it off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this third and final webinar in this series that Sea Change is running with us, the Partnership for America's Children. And this webinar will be on making the pitch and how to make an appeal to your potential donors. And so with us, we have the two principals at Sea Change Strategies, Mark Rovner and Alia McKee. And they have also been working with a cohort of individual fundraising folks at a number of partnership organizations, and a number of you on this webinar are part of that group. But even if you're not, welcome. And we hope that this will be a really beneficial webinar for all of the folks in our network. So, and also for those at the Center on Budget too. So thank you for joining us today, and I will let Mark and Aaliyah take it away.
Thank you, Polani. I'm going to review what we're going to do, and then we'll get started. This is going to be live pitching. We are hoping and expecting the three of you will volunteer to be Ask Guinea Pigs. We will be gentle with our feedback. Before we get into that, this is how I propose that it work. I'm going to review a couple of key rules about pitching and about talking about your charity in general. That would apply to these pitches, but would apply to your communications in general. Then we're going to do 3 rounds with 3 slightly different scenarios. I will be the donor in 2 of them. Aaliyah will be the donor in 1 of them. We'll then ask you to volunteer. Like when we get to the first round, we'll ask for a volunteer. I will then read out loud a scenario and chat it into the chat box, which will pop up on your screen. And you'll have 1 minute to prepare. And even though 1 minute sounds intense, It's great to be able to do your spiel if you're sitting on an airplane, if you're on an elevator, if you get seated next to a potential donor. Sometimes you do better. Sometimes I do better when I'm not preparing, when I'm just present. So you'll get a minute. And then we'll go 3 to 5 minutes for the pitch, and I'll try to ask you some questions, and Leah will try to ask you some questions as the donor, and then we'll debrief. Does that make sense? Leah, was that clear?
I think so.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So you all got, and Polani sent back around the rules for asking, the 10 rules for asking, and it's in your extras folder. And anyone who's on this call that's not part of the Partnership for America's Kids, if you want access to that, if you want access to the folder, which has a lot of stuff in it, just let Polani know. I'm only going to remind you of 3 of the rules. And they strike me as the most important rules anytime you're talking to someone about your organization. And then I'm going to invite Alia to comment. The first one, and I have to say, based on the end of your copy we've reviewed, you guys really get this. The first rule is it's about the donor and it's not about you. It's not about how great the organization is. People support your organization because they want to make a difference and they see you as the instrument for making a difference. So it's all about what the donor has the power to do as a result of giving to you. The second is, if at all possible, tell a story. The name of the game is to engage emotions, and the most powerful tool for engaging emotions is a story. And if you were on the webinar on the end of your fundraising appeals, there were a number of really good stories. So that would be my number 2. And my number 3 harkens back to something Alia talked about at the training, which is don't try to describe the whole iceberg. Almost every donor is only interested in a small part of what you do. If you don't know which small part the donor's interested in, then I would default to whatever has the most urgency and the most emotional energy. So the 3 rules for today are: it's about the donor, not about you. Tell a story if you can, and don't describe the whole iceberg. I'm going to invite Alia to add or emphasize anything else.
The only thing I'd add is that, and we've kind of done this for you in the scenarios we built today, is that for every conversation with a donor, you really want to do something that one of our leadership gurus calls a POP, which is purpose, outcome, and process, right? Because for some donors, the conversation would be just to get to know them better, right? And then the outcome would be another meeting. And the process would be for you to listen a lot and ask a lot of questions, right? For some donors, right, who you already have a good relationship with and you're ready to make the ask, the purpose is to get a gift commitment, and the outcome would be a gift commitment. And the process would be around how you get from A to the gift commitment in that conversation. So I always just like to think very quickly before, and as you see these scenarios pop up, that could be a way that you think about prepping. What's the purpose? What's the outcome? And what's my process for getting there?
And as Alia said, we've given you the purpose. So we've given you a big head start with each scenario. So you can just collect your thoughts for where you want to come out of this and how you're going to get there. And I will tell you, because I'm about to ask for a volunteer for scenario 1, they get a little harder as we go along. So going first has its advantages.
And we will be very gentle. And guys, nobody's expected to be an expert at this point, but the best way to get good at this is to role play it. So come on, bring it on.
We're going to give you an A no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So most of you are not on video. So whoever speaks up first and is willing to volunteer for the first scenario, this is your moment. Lonnie, your phone's ringing.
I know.
Sure. It's Paul.
Oh, Paul! Way to go, Paul.
I'm willing to make a fool of myself in front of
You will not make a fool of yourself.
I promise you won't. I promise you won't.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm chatting the scenario into the box. This is just for Paul. And I'm going to read it out loud. Hold on. I didn't want to chat in. Oh, yes. Okay, there it is. You're an executive director. You're speaking to a donor prospect who's new in your community. The donor's new to the community. You've learned that, in this case, he has made substantial gifts to child policy organizations in the former state where they lived. You'd like to get a face-to-face meeting to establish contact and familiarize the donor with your organization. So all you're trying to do is get a meeting. And I'm going to look at my watch, and you have 1 minute to prepare.
And Mark, to clarify, this would be a phone call, right?
This would be a phone call.
Oh, this is a phone call. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a cold call? Like this person doesn't know me or doesn't know anything about us, or has somebody already introduced us?
They've agreed to take the call, but they don't really know you and they don't really know the organization. So they're curious enough to take the call. I'm going to mute everyone who's not Paul at this point. Ooh, it got so quiet. And Paul, you have another 30 seconds, but you can begin anytime you want.
Thank you. Sure. So bring. To dial you up, I guess.
Hello, this is Mark Rovner.
Hi, Mark. My name's Paul Kay. I'm the chair of the Scholar Center and ex-person arranged for us to be able to talk. It's really a pleasure to welcome you to our state and talk a little bit about the Scholar Center, where I've been the chair for the last 5 or 10 years.
Thank you very much.
So let's start really by asking you what the work you did in your former state was, whatever that state was, and what were the things that you found the most interesting. Our focus is on child policy, and I understand that that's been your interest as well. I'll certainly tell you a little bit more about us, but realistically, I'd really like to hear what you found most interesting and most rewarding in your former, wherever you were.
Well, thank you. I was on Long Island, and I'm actually retired now. I was a hedge fund trader, and so I spend a lot of my time on philanthropy. My wife and I do, and we're very interested in children. One of our children is autistic, and we've had a lot of challenges with that, and it's just sensitized us to how important it is to be able to take care of kids, especially kids with special needs. Most of our giving is in the area of children. Obviously, we give to autism-related causes. We give to policy causes because we think the state and the federal government has a role to play in taking care of special needs kids. And we also give to childhood hunger because most people don't know that there's hunger in America, and there really is. And so we support that a lot too. And we're really curious to know what this community is like and where you fit into the mosaic.
Well, that's terrific. So the Scholar Center, formerly was called the State Charities Aid Association. It was actually started by Alexander Hamilton's great-granddaughter in the late 1900s. If you've watched the musical, you might know that Eliza Hamilton, Alexander's wife, started the first orphanage. Well, Louisa Lee, her great-granddaughter, was concerned about the condition in orphanages. And so she started organizing committees around the state to see what was going on in those orphanages, and soon figured out that what had to happen was state policy and state regulation had to be developed. And really our history over 140 plus years has been to follow the idea that the state has a responsibility, and we have as citizens, to make sure that the most vulnerable children in our society get the same kind of advocacy and the same kind of representation that folks who are more fortunate do. So we've tackled issues around foster care, around universal pre-K. We were actually leaders in that coalition. Currently, we're working on a Medicaid policy and how it affects 0 to 3 kids, and working on issues around development, child development, as well as ways to change practice. I happen to be a pediatrician, so that's an area of my interest.
Interesting.
Change medical practice to make sure we identify kids at risk. So it sounds like we cover a lot of the same areas, and I'd be happy to tell you a little bit more about how we work as an organization. But first, I'd like to get your reaction to that.
Well,
one of the things that attracted me was I thought it was pretty cool to join something that had that kind of history.
One of the things in my line of work that we talk about a lot is unique value proposition. Is what makes a cause or a company stand out and be distinctive in the mix. What would you say is your organization's unique value proposition?
Well, I think the biggest strength of SCAA over its 150 years is that it's been independent, and it's had, frankly, a good endowment base, so that we've never been providers of services. So we've been kind of an honest broker for both Republicans and Democratic administration, and a trusted source in the government world. That's maybe why you haven't heard of us so much, because in some ways our quiet approach to policy has earned us the trust of folks across both sides of the aisle, and enabled us to work. And I think in some ways that's our biggest currency, but it's also one of our challenges in fundraising, to be frank.
You said you were endowed, so I'm trying to understand what your fundraising challenge is.
Endowment's getting smaller, and the needs are getting larger. That endowment is largely made up of monies that were left 100 years ago, and it's a wonderful base. It allows us to be independent, but we've taken on issues such as universal fluoridation, foster child work, child welfare work, which is hard to get funding for. And so we rely on that endowment to be able to have a large enough staff to tackle this. Currently, we have a staff of 7, and a very effective and connected CEO.
Well, it sounds like what you're doing is very interesting, and I'm going to put my assistant on the phone so that you can get my address and maybe send me some materials so I can learn more about the organization.
I would be very happy to do that, but what I'd really love to do is to have my CEO and I come down and meet you at any time of your convenience. She's much more versed on the details of the policy work she does. She's a veteran of Albany, so she can tell you more about the effective ways that we work, and I'd really love a chance to meet you, because it sounds like we have an awful lot of things in common.
Well, let me talk to my assistant, and let's see what my calendar looks like for the next couple of weeks.
Well, that's terrific. I'll make sure we get you sent something, and I'm very hopeful that we can meet and talk again. And we'll be happy to come to you wherever you are.
Great.
Bye.
Nicely done, sir. I'm going to unmute everyone. I'm going to invite Alia first, and then everyone else to give any comments and feedback.
There's so many things I really liked about that, Paul. Number one, you're very courageous to go first, but that's not the reason I liked it. I loved how you started with the donor. That's so, I mean, you took Mark's advice, like you didn't even, you basically said, hey, we work on children's issues, but I want to know, what turned you on in your former community. And I think that would have been an easier transition had we told you where Mark came from before. But I think you handled that with panache. And then me particularly, I love the historical anchor because it ties you to, plus Hamilton is so hot right now that it ties you to it. You were so personable talking about, if you've seen the musical, you'd know Eliza Hamilton, and then tying it to her work with orphanages and the fact that the state has the responsibility. Oh my gosh, I thought that was just like pitch perfect. Yeah. And then there was one other thing that you did that two other things that you did that I would call out. You talked about you being a pediatrician, and you had heard him talk about his special needs child, and that I think you had him at that. And what I loved is you didn't belabor it. You were just like, I'm a pediatrician. And, I could just tell, like, the conversation probably shifted at that point in this guy's mind. You had a little bit more credibility with him. And then finally, you didn't say no. You didn't say yes to just the brochure. You were like, I want to do a meeting. And I think that you did that in a really nice way.
Yeah. How about some others? That's great feedback.
How about some stuff I could have done better?
I have one or two, but they're advanced because Alia, I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
I think you could have created a couple of more openings for me to talk. Like when you mentioned Hamilton, you could have said, "Did you happen to see Hamilton?" And even if I said no, it's just an opportunity for me to talk back to you, to get into the conversation. And I might have, and again, this is advanced, I might have asked for permission to call him if you don't hear from the assistant after a week.
Yeah.
I thought about that, but I didn't know if it was too pushy.
And one thing I would add, in something, that you could have worked on, is maybe have a victory in your back pocket. When Mark was talking about what sets you apart from the other, mosaic of organizations, it could have been interesting to say, without us working across the aisle, this would not have happened, right? To really make you stand out. Because Mark is a hedge fund manager, so it's good. I really like the way that you talked about, like, spanning the aisle, because you have no idea where he, like, sits there. So I thought that was great, but I might be like, and without that approach, then this policy wouldn't have gone through, or something like that.
And just for the record, I couldn't even tell you what a hedge fund is. but I have interviewed a lot of
money
managers, and they ask very businessy kinds of questions. Yeah. Anyone else? Kylie, Terry, Kathy, Helen,
Elise,
Tricia.
Okay, this is Kathy. And this is absolutely my jealousy talking. I'm not sure I would have mentioned at that point the endowment. I think that would be a discussion that you might have when you see him. Maybe because I have no clue, what it's like to have something like that. But I think I would have held off on that until I was able to meet with him.
I agree. That was a bit of a trap, and I didn't know how much trouble to put you in when you raised that.
You did, though, Mark, and you had a great answer for it, Paul. But I agree with Kathy that probably not the first. I mean, but it could go a two-way, because if Mark, the donor, looks on your site and takes a look at your financials, which he might, right? He might, call you to task on it. And
I have people to do that for me.
Right. And it might be nice that you had not skirted around it. But, I hear what Kathy's saying.
My thinking was it was going to become the elephant in the room pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So, and I do think, and Helen can chime in, I do think it's actually something that distinguishes us. But it could be a trap. I get it. But, I think it's one of the things that makes us different is we don't provide any service to anybody. And we really, we've been kind of be able to be independent because we got the money in the bank. We just don't have enough.
Aaliyah and I worked with the, what does BRC stand for? Or does
Bowery Residence Committee.
Bowery Residence Committee. They get a ton of state money, but there are things that they cannot raise money for from the state, and it's critical to their work. And it would be super helpful to say, the reason we're talking to donors like you is because we couldn't do X, Y, and Z. One example of that I saw in the end of your letters advocacy.
Yeah.
This is Helen again, and Paul, I'm so impressed. I can't wait until you and Kate go out on the trail.
Be a donor.
On the donor trail. I guess one of my sort of questions and comments in reflecting on Paul's performance is, do we spend a little bit more time on this first call talking about, and it's related to the endowment question, talking about how we need sort of money that's not tied to anything to do some of our work, and that's why we want to talk to people like this, like you as a hedge fund donor, because the kind of funding that somebody who's an independent person can provide to us is so valuable, as opposed to the kind of money that we get from foundations. There was never talk about the foundation world in that. Or is that something that you wait for until you're actually having a meeting and talking more specifically?
Aaliyah, what do you think?
Well, my perspective is really starting with audience first. And because this guy, Paul had done his research and knew that he had given to other child advocacy groups wherever he came from, right? I would probably wait until I met in person, knowing that he has some understanding, right?
Okay.
Like that, because, and even when Mark started talking, he said he understands, why you need to fund policy, right? And he's an individual donor saying this. But if it were a new donor, like someone who, is new and someone invited them into the circle, then yeah, I think I would use this call as an introduction to that. Like, you might want to, you might wonder why we need individual donors. Well, let me take you behind the curtain and let you know why.
Okay, great.
The last thing I'll say is Paul, if you are a donor to the organization, I would identify yourself as a donor and tell the person why you're so proud to be supporting the organization.
Okay.
Because the donor will ask you. If you're a board member, the donor will ask you if you're giving to the organization.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is Kylie. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Okay. So in regards to setting up like the meeting and everything, how pushy do we want to be? I mean, I've worked in like volunteer recruitment in the past. And a lot of times we don't want to end the meeting without like a set time and, and not giving them a way to say yes or no, saying do mornings or afternoons work better for you, or does the beginning of the week or the end of the week, so that they have to answer that way? Is that something we could do with donor meetings as well?
Aaliyah's nodding, and I tend to agree. I would say yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And what's cool is once you get to Mark's assistant, that's what her job is, right? So I think if Mark hadn't given you, like, I'm going to transfer you to my assistant, then you could be pushier with Mark. But at that point, Paul can be pushy. Mark is given his calendar to the assistant, so I don't think Paul needed to be that pushy. But if Mark was hemming and hawing about that and being like, yeah, I'd like to meet, but the next little bit is a little busy, then Paul could be like, well, what about the week of this? And, we could come to your office, mornings, would that be better? I would totally be pushy.
Okay.
You'd come to my chalet in Aspen, maybe. We should move on. Do we have a volunteer for the second one? Helen, your box just lit up. Does that mean that you're volunteering?
No, I'm not going to volunteer because, first of all, I think another organization should, and I'm part of Skylar. And secondly, is I'm probably not going to be the one making the ask.
Okay.
Paul and Kate are going to probably be the ones making the ask.
Well, you're in good hands with Paul.
Yeah.
You're in very good hands with Paul. All right. So we need another victim. I mean, student. Paul will tell you it's fun.
It's totally fun. Should we
you're the one who told them it was going to get harder. That's why.
The second one isn't that hard. I'm the donor. I'm a pushover.
And don't think that women are pushovers in general.
Yes, no. No, but I am.
It's not that, none of these scenarios are that difficult.
Kathy, Kylie, Terry, Elise, who wants to go?
I'll go ahead and go, Kylie.
Great, Kylie, thank you.
All right, I am going to post the second scenario on the chat and read it out loud, and then give you a minute, and you will be talking to Alia. Let's see if that goes. Taking a minute. All right, I'm going to read it out loud. It doesn't seem to be popping up. Don't know why. You are an executive director. The person you're talking to is a reliable supporter who knows your work. The donor has been a reliable supporter for several years. She has donated between $2,000 and $4,000 every year since 2011. You haven't heard from the donor yet this year, which is unusual at this point in the year, maybe a little concerning. You'd like the donor to make a challenge donation of $5,000, proceeds from which will go to match gifts from new donors. Are you clear, Kylie? Do you need any clarification on what that how that match would work?
No, I think I have enough information.
Okay. Take a minute, and you can really start at any time, but you got a minute.
Is this a phone call as well?
Yes, all of these are phone calls.
Okay.
Well, Audie, remind us to embarrass all of the people from the group that didn't come to this call.
Okay.
Okay, Kylie,
Okay.
you've got 10 seconds.
Okay. Just a disclaimer, I have never asked for money from anyone before, so I'm on this because I want to learn. So
This is so exciting. We love you, Kylie. Go for it.
All right. Ring, ring.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Alia. This is Kylie with the Child and Family Policy Center. How have you been? We haven't heard from you in a while.
I'm Kylie. Oh, I am so sorry. I have been so run ragged these days. I keep meaning to get in touch with you guys. And what's going on with you? How's everything?
Things have been going well. As you know, I mean, our work is very important to this community, and we've been sustaining a lot of our donors lately, and we're just trying to keep in touch with everyone and keep everyone updated on what's going on. And since we, haven't heard from you, we decided we wanted to reach out and kind of just see how you're doing and let you know of some of the new programs we're running and some of the campaigns we're trying to get started to raise some more money for our programs and make sure that we keep children and Iowa children and families at the forefront of, the legislature's minds so that we can pass policies that will help them economically and of course with healthcare and education as well. And so
yeah, I mean, Kylie, I have to tell you, I don't know about you, but I have been sick to my stomach this last year. I've been like kept up at night about, DACA and, what's going on with those poor dreamers. And, I'm terrified of like nuclear threats. I just feel like there's so many big things. I've had such a hard time concentrating and, it just feels very overwhelming right now.
Yes, trust me, I'm with you. It can be very overwhelming. And I know, with all the things that are happening, it's hard to choose which issue you want to support and which one deserves the most attention. And of course, I mean, they all are very important and every issue needs our attention. But a lot of these issues, the Child and Family Policy Center, I mean, we, as you know, focus on anything that affects children and families in Iowa. So a lot of those issues that you're talking about, I mean, we're multifaceted. Our efforts help in an array of those issues and can help make a difference in children's and families' lives. And so I definitely am with you, and I understand how frustrating and overwhelming it can be. And so we want to thank you for your gifts that you've given us in the past, your annual gifts. And I mean, you've been with us, supporting us since 2011, and we're so appreciative of that. And because of these issues, we're really wanting to ask people for a little bit more, to give a little bit more of their time and money to us so that we can continue fighting for children and families in Iowa. And I know you've given us between $2,000 and $4,000 every year, which has been so helpful and so appreciated. And we'd really love for you to consider donating $5,000 this year, just a little bit more to make sure that our efforts can keep going and be continued.
Yeah, I love, I feel so good about giving you guys my donation, and I am curious about increasing my gift. What specifically are you guys working on that, like I said, I'm just really looking for something tangible to like sink my teeth into.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're really focusing our efforts on the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP, which is right now being kind of held up in the air in Congress, and as well as early childhood education. Our advocacy person is really focusing on expanding access to childcare and making sure that providers are compensated fairly. And, those are just a couple of the things. I mean, right now, I think healthcare has been, for the past couple months, a really big issue that we're fighting for, and making sure that legislators understand how it affects the lives of everyday people. And, your gift will be matched from new donors. And so whatever amount you decide to go with the $5,000 or more, it will be matched by new donors. And so your donation will affect even more people than me.
Oh, wow. And it's people beyond me. So you guys are really doing like a wider push.
Yes,
like to get more people like me involved. You know what, Kylie, I should talk to my husband because, he and I share these decisions. Mm-hmm. But, I would like to, I will pledge, I need to talk to my husband tonight.
Well, what's holding you up? Is it the time? Is it the amount of money? I mean, I'd like to, just talk through, what's kind of keeping you on the fence.
It's not. It's just that we told each other that anything over $500, we have to talk to one another about.
Yes. I can't argue with that.
Yeah. And so, but so the money, Kylie, I love the work you do. We've been supporting you, since 2011, you said.
Yes.
So I just need to I need to talk to him tonight. And then, maybe, you and I can connect a little later.
Yeah, if you want to talk to him tonight or tomorrow, you want to set up a call, or we can meet for coffee, maybe sometime later this week.
Why don't I just shoot you an email tomorrow? Or you shoot me an email to remind me, and I'll just tell you yes. And if you could send me the link to the donation form, I know I do that on your website. So, just send me the link, and I'm pretty confident I can get him on board.
Okay, great. I'll send you an email right after we get off the phone, and we can go from there.
All right. Thank you for all your good work, Kylie. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Very good.
Kylie, you are a natural.
Yes.
You hit every critical point. You thanked her. You told her you know her. Donors want to know that you know who they are. And by saying you've given since 2011, that's going to make her feel good. It's going to make her feel invested in the organization. I especially loved your comeback when she started stalling. You said, well, what's up? That's exactly the right question.
Yes.
And she opened the door to being emailed, and you went sailing through the door, which was exactly the right thing to do. My only sort of constructive thing is I might have opened up with that thanks. And I might have cut a little bit, and this is maybe for both of you. I talk to a lot of donors, and you're like, they get on the phone, and it's like, why the heck are you wasting my time? So it's sort of like, why are you calling me? Sort of getting some version of that out at the top of the call might be a good thing.
Hitting the punchline first. I'm calling because, I've noticed you haven't renewed, and, I want to get your commitment.
And we have a special opportunity for you to be the name on the match. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Great job. Absolutely great job. Aaliyah, anything to add?
No, one other thing that I thought you did great, Kylie, is even without knowing me, you made it sound like you knew this donor. It felt very conversational, like we had met at galas or we had met at different things. Like it didn't feel like you seem like a very personable person. And I think that that's half the battle with these things, is just being like, just having a high social awareness. And I think you did. From the
get-go, from the, hi, how are you? I just thought, this is someone I want to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what else? What else do people see? And you guys have lucked out. We don't have time for a third one.
Are we unmuted?
Yeah, you guys are unmuted.
Okay. This is Helen. So Kylie, that was really terrific. Especially because you said you've never done anything like that before. That was pretty darn awesome for your first time.
It is.
There were two things that struck me that if you wanted some sort of, and I'll throw it out to Mark and Aaliyah to see if they would agree with me. First of all, you said that Aaliyah had been a consistent donor since 2011, given $2,000 to $4,000 a year. I think what I might have done, given that I was going to be asking for $5,000, I think I might have forgotten about the low end and just talked about the high end as a way to sort of move into wanting them to go even higher, saying something like, many times in the last few years, you've been able to give us $4,000, and we're so grateful for that, and not mention the lower end. So that was one thing. And then I thought you did a really nice job with when Aaliyah was, and I think, well, she certainly speaks for me, so upset with everything that we're seeing in the news. I thought you did a great job in terms of, I forget what the term is, but, validating what her concerns are, and feeling them yourself. I think I might have moved a little faster into, here's something really concrete that might make you feel better. And then I would talk about the match probably pretty quickly into that. So those were the two kind of things I had.
Great feedback. Absolutely great feedback. And one of the things, donors typically don't remember how much they gave last year. I know that sounds crazy, but like in the spot. So I think saying, you know, you've given $4,000, you know, is accurate. So I love that. And I do, yeah, I was wanting you to say, here's something tangible you can do. Like, I can't control whether or not we go to nuclear war with Kim Jong-un, right? But here's something I mean, not that you would say that, like, Alia, I'm sorry, you can't control it. But, you know, you could be like, you know, this is something very tangible. Great feedback, Helen.
Yeah, thank you.
How about some others?
But I thought it was terrific. The one thing the person started, Alia, you started with your anguish about DACA and immigrants, and maybe I would have found a way to stick something that you do about that into what it is your organization does. Even if it's just a few words, you know.
Good call.
We're working on health stuff, and especially these poor kids or whatever. Just respond to what she said she couldn't sleep about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Kathy. I agree with that with Paul. And my other comment is this may purely be a Southern thing. Since I started out as a Yankee, I see some differences. I think when she mentioned, oh, life has been so chaotic, you know, I might have said something, assuming there is something. Gosh, I remember the last time we were talking, your mom was sick, or your son had just got accepted at A&M and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, kind of chit-chat a little bit. And again, this is probably what I've learned.
And Kathy, I'm from Texas. And so, yeah, absolutely.
You got it.
Yeah. You know, like, oh, you start with a lot of that. Oh, life's been crazy.
and I thought about doing that, but I couldn't think of anything quick enough, like what I know about you. Right. So I was like, but that's something that, yes, I have done before. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
You did great. You
really did. Mm-hmm. You guys were terrific.
So, you know, really, I apologize that we don't have time for the third scenario. It was, Mark, do you want to just let them know what it was? So that way, if they want to practice on their own.
It was the big one. You're an executive director and you are talking to a major donor prospect. The donor has been a generous supporter of local causes, but not yours, and has made gifts as high as $100,000 to some local charities. You've had 3 meetings with the donor, after which he or she agreed to look at a proposal. You haven't heard a peep since you submitted the proposal 4 months ago. You'd like to know if they plan to make a gift. That's a very realistic scenario.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's realistic to wait 4 months?
Maybe not. Actually, that's a really good point.
So in 25 words or less, tell us what you should say.
Right.
Mark, how would you do that one if you were just?
I would open up saying, I just want to make sure you got it. We've been having trouble with the mail, and if you've seen it, do you have any questions? Is there anything we can clarify? And we're really hoping that we'll get a favorable response from you and see where it goes from there.
One thing that Mark is masterful at, because, you know, even we do fundraising for a living, but we also have to sell business to clients. And one thing that Mark is really masterful at is putting the client first. And I think that Mark, you know, you also might have just knowing you might have re-emphasized what you already know about this donor. I followed your work. I saw you in the San Antonio Chronicle, Kathy? I can't remember.
Express News.
I saw you with this other, organization. And, I just really want you part of my team. I know this about you. I know it doesn't seem big brothery at all, as long as it's not done in like a creepy way. And really making sure that donor knows that you know who they are.
Yeah, right? I think that's right, Alia. I think that's exactly right.
And Mark does that better than I do. It comes naturally to some people. And for me, I always have to, when I'm in a new business environment, I always have to remember who am I talking to? What are their needs? What do they care about? It's not about me, it's about them.
They want to tell their story. Oftentimes they want to tell their story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before we, sign off, I really hope that this just illustrates how helpful it is to role play. Before you have a big meeting, and remember that purpose, outcome, process. We didn't give you a long time we gave you 1 minute each. You're going to have a lot longer to think through this with the people on your team. What is the purpose of this meeting? What is the outcome that we want? And what is the process that we think is going to get us there? And then the rest is just, sometimes you'll nail it and sometimes you won't. And it's okay when you don't. You just learn.
And Aaliyah, I'm pretty sure I have a paper on how to do a pop. I'll put that in the extras folder.
Great.
Good.
All right. Any general questions? We have 3 whole minutes.
This was really helpful.
Yeah, it is. I agree. The one thing that I think I'm the most incompetent and fearful about is actually asking for large amounts. I don't even know how much to ask, but I don't even know if you're supposed to know that. But if I want somebody to, contribute 50 grand to an endowment, how do you even approach that conversation?
It's not a big number to them. If you've done your homework, it's not a big number to them. It sounds like a big number to you.
And I'm wondering, even though we've had a small attendance for this one, it could have been a number of things. It could have been the technology, it could have been timing, or it could have been that people were afraid that we were going to put them on the spot. But it sounds like there might be an appetite. It sounds like this is very helpful. So Palani, maybe we talk about maybe doing one based on exactly what Paul was talking about. And maybe there's homework around it. So there's a little bit more meat around the scenario. So that way we could practice something like that.
We'll create a little dossier on.
Yeah, that Paul would have already submitted to the donor, and then the donor could go through it, and maybe ask some questions, and we could see how that process would look.
That would be fantastic.
Okay, something for us to consider as we think about next steps with this engagement.
The reason I said that is I think one of the reasons I was at ease is because I didn't have to talk numbers much.
Yeah.
I think if I had to get to some actual number, I don't think I would have seemed so cool.
Yeah.
So I think I would have fumbled and bumbled a lot more.
You almost certainly would not be talking money in your first meeting.
No, I know that. That's the one I think I could. That is the one I think I could do pretty well. I think the one I'm completely terrified of is when I actually have to ask this person I've met 3 times and had lunch, how about 100 grand? You know what I mean? So, that's the leap I would be terrified to make.
Yeah.
And could use some role playing about how to best do that. Once you've made this initial stuff is easy. It's the hard part is actually asking for the money. And especially if it's big money.
And sometimes if it's big money, I had a client who was just recently successful getting her first, she's starting a major giving program from scratch. And she did it and she said $25,000 over $25,000 for 3 years. So she got a $75K commitment, but it was over 3 years. So it was much more palatable for the donor. So that's a way that you could also think about packaging it. Right? Particularly with someone who might not have the relationship with you where you can feel like, okay, yeah. I can ask you for $75K.
I wouldn't be any less terrified about asking for that.
well then, Kalani, let's talk about potentially, if there is interest, in doing something like that, maybe we could do another role play like that.
But Paul, if you're asking for $75,000, there's a good chance that person spends more than that on their dog. It's just a different.
Yeah, well.
Still, it's so hard. It's so hard.
It is. But to go in knowing that's not a huge sum of money to the donor, I don't know, maybe lowers the anxiety level a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I find the guy I ask or the lady. But no, this was very helpful. So I think your point is this exercise is a good way to learn to get more comfortable with it.
Yeah, you just have to do it. You just have to role play it.
Okay. Well,
all right. Thank you guys. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk to Palani and think through next steps on this.
And Palani, I'll give you a Dropbox link to the recording.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You guys were troopers. Thank you.
Thank you.